in this unit so far, what we've done so far is we've looked at the briefs of, like types of organization, the ownership of the organization, how they are formed, the structure, the culture of the organization. We've looked at a bit of external factors, macro and micro factors which affect the business in general. If you're talking about an organization and in general talk about a business, how are the government policies, fiscal instruments, monetary instruments affect the business and the environment. We look at covering, finance, in particular accounts, because there's no business which can work without money. So obviously how the resources of finance are, looked at. We looked at the importance of planning when you look at financial planning. We looked at understanding some key statements which are required for you to understand how to interpret them for decision-making purposes, things like the balance sheet, the profit and loss account. We briefly looked at, some ratios which are important, like the profitability ratio. We look at payback ratio, annualized percentage rate of interest, APR. Then we subsequently went on, study basically key frameworks, things like, PESTEL and SWOT. But we also looked at some of the team building aspects of, why team building and dynamics are important. What are the differences between leaders and managers, management styles, how leaders look at motivating employees or staff within the organization. And then in the last session, what we looked at was understanding, the role of HR and HR department within an organization, and what are the key important legislation which you have to look at, like, for example, the labor laws, in particular, how do you look at grievances, how do you raise that internally with the HR, and if they do not get solved within the remits of the organization, the HR department sets in. Role of unions, briefly we looked at. And then how do we look at recruitment and selection, and what is the role which HR plays in training, recruitment, selection, and the 6 key functions which they do. So the last bit that we are looking at today, studying in this particular unit in how businesses operate, would be to understand the importance of, customer service, and why is in every organization the success of the business actually depends on providing the service they promise, or the service they write, advertise, promote about in their marketing literature, or in particular, any sort of communication that it does. So which helps it differentiate from other businesses. So when I say, you can order a pizza from Pizza Hut and you're guaranteed a delivery within 30 minutes or lower, so half an hour or, under half an hour. And you are kind of, let's put it this way, when you look at the advert, obviously you look at promotions in terms of the price points and, what you can do with. But when you look at the delivery aspect of it, the promise aspect of it, what they say is that we deliver pizzas which are fresh, hot, and obviously under 30 minutes is what you go by when you look at the promise of delivery in terms of service. So every time you go to an outlet to have a pizza, it tastes the same, whether you have it in A outlet in Trafford, or, for example, A outlet in London, or, a different Pizza Hut outlet in a different location. You will always find the taste, the kind of the pizza when it's prepared, the flavors, the toppings, everything around that particular product remains the same, isn't it?
Yeah, that's.
So when we look at that promise of something that we get to see which organizations advertise, that their fundamentals of the providing of services based on the aspect of this is their signature differentiation. This is what they differentiate and what they provide. When you look at eating at Pizza Hut, or when you look at differentiating with Domino's or any other pizza brand, is that they have their own individual characteristics, and these characteristics basically help you in, kind of picking and choosing and making a choice. This is what I need to look at from an aspect of, why I choose Pizza Hut. Now, this is the promise of delivery in terms of promise of service. So irrespective of wherever you have it, whichever location you have it, whenever you have it during the time of the day, if you order the same product, you get the same taste, the same type of flavors, and you get the same benefits which you expect out of when you pay the price, for that product or that service. And this is a key ingredient or an aspect of when companies define, or when businesses define what actually defines their success. Why do people come again and again and become kind of give you repeat business? Is because of the fact that they tend to kind of trust your brand and the product that you provide or the service that you provide, uh, and it is something which is as it is claimed on the marketing literature or the collateral, and that is what you end up delivering to the customer when they ask for it. So let me look at also maybe another example before we get into some of the slides that we look at. You look at travel and tourism industry in particular. One example that we will take while covering this particular outcome would be to look at a service industry. Now, when we look at travel and tourism, we generally look at an industry which is centered, or the cornerstone of this particular industry is that it provides services, different types of services to its customers, and this is one of the largest employers of people across the world. So it is a very large industry. It is probably one of the biggest industries in terms of sectors when we look at. And this entire sector is its success of this entire sector, the services which it provides, actually depends on customer and customer services. So you buy a holiday package, you are essentially going to be becoming a customer of a hotel, an airline, probably a taxi service or a cab service. At some stage, you will dine and wine within a hotel, restaurant or things like that. You might end up going to a leisure park, or you might participate in certain activities. But at every step of the way, when you're taking a vacation or a holiday, you are actually experiencing customer service. Will that be right to say that, this is an example wherein at every step of the product or the service that you use, you are looking at getting service, or receiving service as a customer from one type of the, facility or the other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if I book a holiday with Jet2 Holidays, for example, from the time you go onto their website to the time that you end up booking the ticket, and then to a certain extent buying the package, the hotel stay, everything involves you receiving a service from a particular department within that company. So let's look at dwelling into a bit more into understanding how this is important, and why is this feature of when we talk of customer service important, because this is the promise or the underlining fine terms and conditions which you sign on for a dotted line, is something which is defined in those fine prints, which basically talk about that, okay, this is what you will receive if you sign up for this service, or this is what you expect to get from or in return when you make payment, or when you make payment for some of the services that you want to receive. So it kind of dictates, if you've had a good experience, you might come back and dine in that restaurant again, maybe order from that takeaway again, take a holiday again with that operator. To a certain extent, it also looks at defining, if you end up making a complaint, for example, against a particular person in this industry, then it could also mean that the person might end up having a reprimand, or end up even losing a job if there are multiple number of complaints of the same nature being received. So you see a lot of staff turnover also happening, because people sometimes they get let's put it this way, there's a lot of attrition which happens within this industry, because you get used to the types of jobs that you're doing on a daily basis, and they become a lot monotonous, in the sense you do the same things again and again, and people end up leaving the job because they do find that they get bored out of it, or they, for example, get kind of over it, and they end up trying to look for other positions. But this is an industry which sees a lot of churn in particular, or turnover in particular of staff as well. Right. And what this industry also, when we look at customer service in general, what we also see is, when we want to understand the various elements of customer service, what we tend to do is we need to understand some of the key elements which are involved in terms of delivering this service to the customer. And they could be, if you understand the customer well, in terms of where the customer is coming from, the background, the demographics, which is nothing but profiling to a certain extent, then you are able to tailor some of the services the customer wants according to their preferences. So this particular department within the travel and tourism industry, or any such industry which involves providing services. So when we talk about financial services, you look at banking as an industry. Most of the services aspect of banking is provided in the outlets. When you go to the banking outlet, so for example, you go to a branch of Barclays, or you go to a branch of Lloyds TSB, the kind of service that you receive at the teller when you withdraw money, deposit a check, or if you're, say, for example, going in to get a mortgage application done. Now, the profiling is an aspect of collecting data within this industry to better understand customer needs, so that the right product and the right solutions could be provided to its customers. So it's a key to understanding the customer, and it's also a key to understanding in return providing the right solutions to you if the profiling and the background is understood correctly. It helps you to do a bit of segmentation, because we look at demographics, we look at people who are in the lower income group, higher income group, middle income group, and that kind of profiling helps you to understand again to what kind of products you have to deliver to this customer, or can be delivered to this customer. An example there would be when you look at going in to do a mortgage application, what you can tend to see is that they tend to relate your mortgage application and your affordability on the basis of the earnings that you do. So somebody who's earning £1 million could probably earn and get a mortgage up to 4.5 times his annual income. Somebody who's earning 100,000 can only get it to 4.5 times his annual income, and that is 450,000 versus 4.5 million. So segmentation of customers can also be done on the basis of profiling and on the basis of understanding the preferences of customers, which allow you to tailor the product or the service that the customer could afford or choose to buy, depending on and that will all depend on the service that you provide. So it is important to understand customization. It is important to understand profiling. It is also important to understand the types and what kind of customers you want to target. If you want to get repeat business, if you want to get customers being loyal to you in terms of your organization, and also to a certain extent, keep enjoying increase in business because of the customer's recommendation to other colleagues and friends, which could be through word of mouth, or through other mediums, which is things like recommendations and positive reviews. So that's an overview, but let's look at understanding in a bit more detail in terms of what do you mean by customer service. And I mentioned to you earlier, when we look at customer service, I think within the travel and tourism sector, or any such industry wherein we involve as a business, when we look at it and you're in the business of providing services, that is where you will be able to look at a perfect definition of what does customer service mean. So it just does not mean, what does it mean? It does not just mean meeting the expectation of the customer, but also to understand how you can exceed the expectation of the customer in a particular area. So sometimes when you look at ordering a pizza, going back to the same example, you know that in 30 minutes they would deliver the pizza. But if it comes to you in 20 minutes, you're a bit surprised, saying that, okay, yeah, that was quick, that was prompt, and here you go. And that is seen in the tipping that you do to the person who has actually come in and delivered your pizza. So if it comes after 30 minutes, you might end up saying, okay, I'm not going to give him anything extra because, one, he's taken a lot of time to deliver, and second, the pizza must have gone soggy, or it must have gone cold. But if that same thing comes to you in about 15 minutes, you're surprised, it is kind of exceeding your expectation. And what you tend to do is the exceeding of expectation is actually reflected in the tipping that you might do to the person who's actually come into the door to deliver the pizza, isn't it?
Right.
If I take the example of a restaurant, you go in and you're having a nice meal and a dinner with your family and friends, and you end up ordering, and towards the end you realize that the food that you ordered is absolutely brilliant, was served hot, it was delivered served on time, and the taste and the flavors or whatever your expectation out of it was absolutely good. So what you end up doing is, normally we end up tipping to about 10% of what the order was, but you might end up giving, if the service was prompt and everything was kind of falling into place, you kind of end up tipping slightly higher. And that goes to show that the restaurant or the people who have served you when you're having that family meal has exceeded or met your expectation. And sometimes that evaluation can be done in the form of, the tip that you leave, or the, the kind of remarks that you place at the restaurant when you're having the dinner, isn't it? So let's understand, why is it important to have or provide good customer service, and what are the points which are covered under the, the umbrella of customer service. So businesses try to develop, when they look at developing repeat business, they have to look at relying on the fact that they have to provide exceptional, or at least, to a particular standard types of customer service. And when they provide this standard of service, it is complying with their quality guideline, or their vision, or their mission in the organization. And this can then be correlated to things like, if you provide this quality of service, which is what is you advertise on your flyer, or the, if it's taking to a restaurant example, you say that, okay, this is a particular dish and that is what it tastes like. When it comes to a certain extent, what you're doing is you're developing loyal customers, or a base of loyal customers who will come in and repeat order, and maybe eat again, wine again, and dine again in your restaurant. The other bits which it also creates sometimes is intangible options, things like you have a general praise about that restaurant or the food that you've had in the place, because it has met or exceeded your expectation. And that kind of gives that restaurant a bit of a competitive edge, because you talk about it, you generally feel good about it. And because of the word of mouth that you're doing, that tends to, kind of does more good to the business, and creates a reputation, and it gives a bit of a competitive edge to that restaurant over the others where you've not had food, or you've not had good experience. Now, the other thing is, in order to provide good levels of customer service, what tends to happen is that at some stage, businesses have to spend money. Like if you look at a restaurant, you go to a particular restaurant, you find that, the ambience and the surroundings and the seating is average. So you tend to form opinions or impressions. Now, to a certain extent, if you want to take somebody across and have a very nice meal, or have a very posh environment, you go to a different class of restaurant, because you feel that, this one, I go very often, but when I go very often, what I tend to feel is that, I've got used to the surroundings, the service and everything, but today I want to experience something much better. And what you decide is you go to a better place, or a kind of a better environment, when you feel that the interiors are much better, the service is much more posh, and obviously to a certain extent there's a differentiation in the menu as well. And that is what defines, when we say cost to the company. So when we look at providing levels of customer service, there could be different levels of customer service. So you can provide, when we look at groupings, or when we look at some sort of rating, you say, when you look at staying in a hotel, you say, okay, I'm going in for, I'm only going overnight for a business trip. I might end up staying at Premier Inn, or a, for example, any such budget hotel. But when you're going with a family, you tend to decide that, okay, I'm going to go in and stay at a minimum 3-star or a 4-star hotel. Now, this rating scale, which has been created in the industry, has been created for a reason. And the reason why this has been created is because the levels of service, the facilities that you get in various different types of hotel are related to providing certain levels of service within that, and that directly translate to cost to a company. So when you look at a 5-star hotel, when we understand the ratings of the hotel, what we look at is, in 5-star, you have a 24-hour coffee shop, you have, a swimming pool, you have 24/7, laundry service. These are 5 critical areas of service which are present, and that is why the hotel is actually given a rating of 5-star. Now, because they're trying to maintain that rating, this rating also ends up relating to the service which the hotel is able to provide. And because this is a level of service they are able to provide, it actually is directly translated to cost to the company, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at, when I say related to cost to the company, it could be cost to the customer, cost to the company. So if you go and rent out or stay in a hotel in a 5-star overnight, you're probably looking at paying anywhere between 120 to 170 pounds. But if you stay in a Premier Inn, or a Holiday Inn, you might end up paying, anywhere between 60 to 90 pounds for the same room. The reasons why the differentiation in terms of the costing happens is because the levels of service which are being provided, or the quality of service which is being provided in that particular price, will also have a direct bearing on what you can expect in terms of facilities that you get in the hotel, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you get the point of understanding that to a certain extent, if I'm saying that we have a 24/7 coffee shop, we have, for example, a lounge where you can, wine and dine, you have a swimming pool, you have a gym, you have a sauna, and you have a 24/7 laundry service, things like that. These are all stars which are attributed to ratings within hotels. And because these ratings at the end of the day translate into some levels of facilities, and facilities translate into level of service, that could mean that it is a cost to the company, but also at the same point in time could mean that it is a cost at which you can afford to stay or pay for that hotel room, depending on what you decide to do. So 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 5 star, 7 star, and that would help look at also defining customer service. Now, obviously, the levels of service, the higher the level of service, the better the service that you provide. In some of the hotels that you go and stay, you don't have room service. So obviously that could mean that when you end up doing a survey at the end of the, your trip or your stay at the hotel, you end up, if there's a question which relates to that, that how was the level of service at the hotel, you might end up saying, okay, it was poor, because you were expecting room service, but it did not have that facility of room service. So customer service defines, the rating in terms of happiness, or to a certain extent in terms of how customers perceive your services in the hotel industry. That is why it is very important that what you state in the brochure or in the marketing collateral is something that you should be able to deliver, and your service should be commensurate to what the customer's expectation could be when they come in and stay a night at your hotel. Is that okay?
Right.
You're able to see. So in terms of, let's look at how this correlation works out. So when we look at principles of customer service, we look at, first impressions. Now, typically, if you've heard of the 3-3-3 rule, which is, if you form an impression, basically what it says is the 3-3-3-30 and 3-3 rule is, if you say you go onto a website and you like it for 3 seconds, you are more likely to be there on that website searching for what you're searching for about 30 seconds. And if you stay on the website for 30 seconds, it's more likely that you will stay there and, kind of finish the process of what you're searching for or looking for, and stay up to about 3 minutes. So similarly, first impressions, are very important in this particular industry. And normally customers, what they do is they go by, when they look at customer service, when you go into a hotel, you find if the hotel lobby is not very clean, your first impression is, oh, I don't think the hotel is going to be clean enough. You enter your room and you find if the bed linen is not, something which is neatly creased and ironed, you find that, your first impression is, no, I'm not impressed with the room. I think the service is going to be sloppy. So impressions are very important in this area of customer service, and that's why you would see that when you enter a hotel, you will normally see that, they do the exteriors in brass and, silver kind of, white metal, so that it looks nice and clean. It forms a very good impression that you're entering into a place which is very posh. Now, there are other elements to the customer service. So obviously presentability, the exterior of the fascia is important for it, for you to have first impressions. But when you get in at the lobby, if somebody greets you well, or when you are in a business and you go in, you're expecting to go and meet somebody, when you get greeted at the reception, you have, you also form a positive impression. So communication at every step of the way would also help you to form some sort of an impression in terms of what kind of customer service you could expect, isn't it?
Yeah.
In this particular learning outcome, what I would suggest you to do is, if you're looking at doing the tasks and you're trying to understand this topic, the suggestion would be to try and visualize anything which is related to service, even at home. You
Right.
come back from work, For example, sometimes what happens is you're very tired, you come back from work, and sometimes your kids end up greeting you, or your spouse or your partner ends up asking you this question, how was your day? Your first impression is that they generally like you, or they want to interact with you, understand how your day was and how did you spend your time today. So customer services will have all those elements in terms of communication, in terms of your first impressions, things that you'd use, touch, feel, will also give you some sort of an impression. If you sit in the lobby of the hotel, or while you're sitting in the reception waiting for your table to be ready in a restaurant, what you do tend to do is pick up certain things which they put on purpose there, which is things like, the menu, for example, the feedback and reviews, and that all helps to create positive impression about what you're going to receive in terms of customer service when you wine and dine in that restaurant or you stay in that hotel. Now, in certain cases, if you go into a hotel, you're checked in, your room isn't ready. What they tend to do is they give you a voucher and say, okay, while your room is being ready, why don't you have a drink or a coffee in our bar? And they give you a tab of £5 or £10. If you go in and, for example, get your car serviced, say at one of the dealerships in Mercedes or Audi or BMW, and they know that you're a new customer who's recently bought a car and has come in for the first service, and if you're not bringing your car in, what they tend to do is they give you a tab so that the taxi can actually take you to a certain location and drop you off. Now, these are things which are defined within the mission statements of what the company and the ethos of the company stands for, the business stands for. And when you see this being enacted in the form of services being provided to customers, this creates a delight, meets the expectation, or does not meet the expectation, and that is where the customer then overall forms an opinion about what kind of service or what kind of persona the company actually stands for. Correct?
Right.
So are you able to relate that in terms of your first impressions? When you look at, sometimes you meet somebody, you form an impression and you say, okay, I don't think I'm going to get on with this person. Sometimes you do that. And that is because you look at the way the person is dressed, the way the person is coming across, interacting with you, shaking hand with you, or something like that. And that tends to give you that impression that, okay, I'm going to get along with it, or I'm not going to get along with it. Isn't it? Now, in certain cases, we look at customer service, speed and accuracy of service is also important. In some organizations and businesses, you will see that there is a rule, or there is something which is given as a part of training to people who handle incoming calls, that you have to pick up the call within 3 rings or 4 rings. And that is to show that the organization cares for every customer calling, inbound, or calling the particular hotel, for example. And this shows that you are eager to serve and you have certain consistency in terms of policies and procedures within the organization. So sometimes speed and accuracy of service also helps create a positive impression, and this then tends to be a lasting kind of a impression which remains with you, that okay, every time I call that company, they pick up the call in 2 or 3 rings, and every time I speak to them, they're able to solve my problem on the phone rather than passing me on to another department. So sometimes knowledge, speed, and accuracy also helps, because it helps to convey certain facts, that every person on the other side of the phone receiving your query or your call is knowledgeable and is willing to respond from a point of view of providing effective service. So when you look at logos and symbols, when you look at say a particular marketing collateral, you tend to form impressions, and these impressions remain with you. They become sticky and they remain with you, and it helps you define it helps also define the organizations whether they will get the customers again in terms of repeat business or not. So sometimes you will see the branding, the logos that they create. For example, when you visit certain websites, it says it has certain kind of certifications or accreditations which says the website is user friendly for people who are dyslexic or people who have disabilities, and they display certain symbols on the website, and that is done to facilitate that we are very customer friendly, and our information is available in different formats for you to be able to access to, and that shows that the organization is going out of the way to ensuring that they are able to reach out to every type of customer possible, isn't it? So in some, that's my Siri on the phone. I think I must have said something which it picked up. So when you sometimes look at going to a bank and you want to speak to a teller, they've installed the hearing in loop. The reason why it's been installed, we don't use it, but customers who have disabilities in terms of hearing disabilities can actually plug in their headphone jack into the systems, or even into the ATMs, so that they are able to receive instructions in other mediums as compared to looking at getting information which is visual. So if you're say for example having an impairment or having something which is a disability, then some of these things which are facilitated on ATMs for you to be able to touch and feel and use that would be the fact that it'll allow you to kind of build some sort of let's put it this way, a positive impression about the company providing the services. Right. Now, when we look at customer services, I think talking about it is fine, but most companies have to have some sort of policies in place. And these policies are policies created over a point in time because they want each and everyone working within the company, the department, or that side of the organization which is customer facing, to have the same response and understanding in terms of certain benchmark which the organization has set. So when we look at say again, going back to the example of pizza, for example, Pizza Hut. Now, irrespective of whichever outlet you go to, the process and the recipe for making the pizza, the moment you order it, which is on the menu, remains the same across all the outlets, isn't it? And that is why we can safely say that if I've had a pizza somewhere in London in Pizza Hut, and I've had somewhere in Manchester, they exactly taste the same. The preparation, the taste, the flavors are exactly the same. Is because they've written a policy booklet, or they've written a booklet around it in terms of how to prepare that that particular pizza or make that preparation, and that provides consistency across wherever the product is being ordered or delivered or eaten. Okay, so in order to define and set standards, most organizations and businesses, what they do is they create policies, and these policies become part and parcel of employee induction plan when they look at employees joining the organization or joining a particular department to be able to deliver these services. Okay. Right. Now, one of the other key things that we look at in terms of customer services is that we look at the fact that this is not an industry in which these services can be delivered by one person. Teamwork and communication are very effective tools which have to be utilized in order for the organization, the individual, the department to be able to deliver effective customer service. Okay. The reason is, if you again imagine most of these locations wherein you go and say, for example, wine and dine. So let's look at a restaurant. Now, the restaurant, if you go to a restaurant, you see different people working within that environment. So there'll be somebody who will greet you at the door when you enter. There'll be somebody who will come in and take in the order. There's a manager who comes in, takes the order, and keeps checking with you if the food is okay and you're happy, you want to order something. There are waiters who basically will come in and deliver food when it's ready. The chef in the background prepares the food. So if this whole setup is not there, if this whole setup does not function as a team, that there is no way that the food will be delivered on time, or you'll be able to receive the get the level of service that you expect when you go and have food at the in an expensive restaurant. So teamwork is a fundamental building block when you look at services industry in general, and when you receive or think of a product or use a service wherein you expect to get some deliverables, you will always see that there is teamwork in the background which is working, and as a team they are able to deliver and it is not just one person who is basically delivering or speaking and providing you all the things which you expect to get. An example here would be a hotel. You look at a cruise liner, you look at the holiday package that you book. So there are different people that you meet and speak to at different points in time. But as a team or as an organization, when you buy that package from that tour operator, you will probably meet different types of people. But that tour package comes across and can only be put together if all of them know what role and function they can play in providing and delivering that service to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
And the other thing that we look at very clearly is that communication is very important in this, is because of the fact that if again going back to the example of where we look at the manager taking the order, and when you're dining in a restaurant, you tend to see that if the order has not been taken correctly, or if you've ordered certain dish and it's not been delivered, is because the communication in terms of you saying it and the manager recording it on the ordering slip has not been done correctly. So communication is a very important bit, because he or she tends to communicate that, okay, he's a repeat customer, please make sure that everything that we do, we take care of him. And communication is at every step of the way is important in providing good customer service, because it is a key ingredient in ensuring that you are able to capture the information at every step of the way, which then can be translated to the next person where he or she is actually going to be delivering the service. So once you check into the hotel, you do your bits at the reception. At some stage, you might be telling the reception when you're checking in, saying that, I'm vegetarian. Could you ensure that, this is done? Or if I'm attending an important business meeting, can you put up, can you put a reminder, wake up call for me for 6 a.m. in the morning? Or could I get bed tea in the morning, at this time? Now, if these details are skipped, that means we are not able to capture the key bits which the customer is expecting the service on, and that would leave, or create a bad impression, and would create some sort of a drawback when the customer ends up not getting, the tea, or not being woken up at the time that he had asked for. And if these bits, in terms of communication, are recorded while the customer is checking in, even if the shift changes, the next person taking over in the shift would clearly know that when they go through this, okay, the customer is requested for a callback, the customer is requested for this, and that happens in an auto mode. And that basically goes to show that everything which is being said at every step of the way is actually being captured as a requirement, which is, to a certain extent, a type of service which the customer is requested for, and that, irrespective of who's at the counter, is recorded and is delivered at the time, and at the specific time or place as it is required for, in the case by customers. And meeting those needs means that the customer is happy. Meeting those needs means the customer has had a good experience, and because he or she has had a good experience, there are high chances of that customer coming back and becoming a repeat customer, staying in the hotel again, and that would mean that you get increased business, and in general, you get loyalty developing out of that customer, for your hotel or for the service that you're providing. So that is where I will stop for today, and that would give you an idea in terms of why customer service to a certain extent is important, and how it leads to creating an understanding within the sector that every business, when it works, there is a need for that business to provide a particular amount, type of service or type of product, and that is why a business exists. And if your existence is basis certain products and services that you provide, then at some stage, these products and services which have to be provided to a certain quality or a level of quality, which will then in return give you returns for the business, which is in terms of either you receiving money, or obviously, let's put it this way, building your reputation, tangible and intangible benefits. So obviously you are in a business, you're not in charity, so you are providing some services, you receive costs towards those services, but the intangible benefit could be that your business ends up getting or developing a reputation over a point in time because of the level of service you provide, and that helps you differentiate yourself from or your business from other competitors in the market. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a copy of this presentation, and along with that, what I'm going to do is send you a handout which will cover some of the key elements of customer service and the principles that we looked at in particular, which will be useful for you to understand this in a bit more detail, and also help you out in obviously doing the assignment.
Great.
Okay, good stuff. So any questions or queries, do come back to me with regards to, this particular learning outcome 6. And with this, what we will do is we have completed the first unit. And in the next session that we do, what we're going to do is do a discussion on the assignment requirements so that we'll discuss exactly, what tasks require what things to be done. And that will kind of be a bit of a recap, but also give you certain, indicators to what is expected in the assessment when you start writing the assignment.
Right.
Okay. I know that you've started to draft something already. The bits that you've completed on learning outcome 1 and 2, my suggestion would be to email that across to me so I can start to give you some feedback on that. And then that guidance would essentially help you to kind of tinker or make changes to the bits of assignment that you're doing, the other bits that you're attempting. Okay. Good stuff.